All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First matter is going to be adoption of the agenda as printed. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and adopt the agenda as printed.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. Cornelia, can you call the roll, please?
Okay. Cotton,
Yes.
Lapine,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Coach B,
That dude.
is he on the call? Coach B,
Brandon, excuse me, Jamie, do you see Coach V?
No, I did not see him on the call.
Okay.
well, motion's approved.
All right. Thank you. Next order is going to be the discussion of the operation budget agenda work session. So I will turn that over to Ms. Watson, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are thankful for this time that you're giving us to bring this budget before you as a workshop. This is the agency's 2021 budget. We have been working diligently, even throughout the COVID-19 crisis, as a team to put together a document that we feel is very effective and efficient for operation of the agency. And we are looking forward to the submission to the Richland County Board after we have had discussion with you. And then from that, we will then bring it back to you all for the final approval. So I'll now turn this over to our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Brandy James. And Brandy, there you go.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, what I'm gonna do now is share my screen so you guys can see the budget document that we've been working on. Okay, can everybody see that?
No.
Uh-oh. Can you see it now?
See it now.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
So before I get started, I just want to let you know how this document is organized. The first page is a summary of all of our projected revenues and expenses. And then each tab breaks down those projected revenues and expenses by division. And so what I'd like to do is start off giving you the overview or the summary, and then work through each particular division. And I will touch on or highlight some of the major changes, but if there's something that you have a question on and I have not touched, please stop me and ask your question. So if you see there, our total proposed budget for 2021, our administrative revenue, we're proposing a $16.9 million versus $17 million last year. And you'll see the major component of that particular projection is our property tax revenue of 16.4. We receive an estimate of what that property tax revenue will be from the county assessor's office. And there's two numbers that the county assessor provides us. They provide us a number or an estimate assuming no millage increase. And then they also provide us a number calculated based on the cap calculation. And what that cap calculation does is it adjusts those property tax revenues for things like the consumer price index as well as population growth. And so what we typically do each year is when we send our request to the county, we typically request the cap calculation because that is the higher number. So that $16.4 million represents that estimate that we received from the county assessor's office. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, and this may be a question for Mayor Bob. Is there any way possible that in because of this this Corona situation that the county can be like, you know, listen, we don't have it, we can't give it to you?
Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think that would be unlikely. Now, you know, the parts that's on the sales tax, the hospitality tax, you know, that's going to be, you know, devastated. Property tax is, you know, property tax is what it is. And the bills, you know, for this year have, you know, the coming year, you know, could reflect a turn down. But they would not, I don't believe, have the ability to not fund the Richland County Recreation Commission. They certainly, the millage part would be whatever the millage brought in. I don't think they could change funding that part of it. And, you know, there are the Supreme Court lawsuits and all on everything else. I think the more likely scenario would be if they had a devastating loss of income, it would probably affect every, you know, government, local government, and we just have to work through it. But I think we should be in pretty good shape for that from a legal standpoint.
I would also add that that is your standalone millage levy. It has really nothing to do with the county, and it's only levied in the unincorporated areas of the county. So to the extent that you're putting your 16.4 mils or whatever the ultimate levy is going to be, it is independent and distinct from the millage levy that the county puts in place for their internal operations.
So there's no part of Richland County revenue that's coming in that we are like dependent upon. So there's nothing with Richland County will affect us. Is what you're saying?
Well, to the extent they levy and collect your property taxes, and there is a shortfall or there's a higher delinquency count, obviously that would have effects on you. But there's nothing that they do that independently directs funds to you. The approval that they have is approving your independent levy for your own independent operating.
Okay. Do you have any other questions surrounding that, Mr. Commissioner Johnson?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Going down a little bit further, our program revenues, you'll notice that we're projecting about $3 million in comparison to 1.9 million. And the majority of that increase is related to increased projections related to our youth camp revenue, as well as scholarship and grant revenue. As we get further in the presentation, I'll talk more in depth about what those increases represent. Okay, as we move further down our summaries page, our expenditures, you'll notice that I've highlighted some expenditures that we'll talk about. So those that are highlighted are the major increases that we're seeing this year. And again, as we get further into the presentation, I'll talk more about what those increases represent. So again, in summary, our total budget for this year is what we're projecting is $19.9 million versus 19.1 last year. If there are no, yes.
I got a question. Brandy, what about projected settlements in a legal situation that comes from this budget, correct?
That is correct, but we've already budgeted for that in those expenditure numbers, and I will discuss that a little bit further when we get into the administrative division.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so what I'm gonna do again is start with our administrative division, and this first tab here is a summary of what those projected revenues and expenses are for this division. And I'll speak more to the expenses. Here we're projecting a total of 4.8 million in expenses versus 3.7 last year. And I'll highlight those projected expenses that have increased. They're the operating expenses. We have some increases related to professional expenses, personnel, training and development, as well as information technology. This next slide provides more detail as to what makes up those expenditures in our administrative division. And so starting with our personnel, what we've done for the administrative division, as far as personnel is concerned, we have included in here 3 additional positions for full-time. One is a grant coordinator, another is a chief technology officer, and a third is the comptroller. We've also included the information technology employees in this division. Last year's budget, those personnel were included in our community relations division. And then we've also added in this division our safety monitors as well. So that's part of the increase that you see there for salaries. The other increase is also related to a 2% cost of living adjustment. And last year we provided our employees with a 3%. However, due to the current situation that we're in with COVID-19, we thought it would be more prudent to instead request a 2% increase. Moving on down to our pension and benefits, the only thing that I will highlight there is our OPEB funding. We talked a little bit about this on last week's call. That $1 million represents the required contribution based on the most recent actuarial study. And so last year, that number looked more like 949,000. Based on the most recent actuarial study, we're at about a little over $1 million for that. The other thing I will highlight is our pension and contribution, and this is true for each division. The employer contribution rate has increased, and so last year that percentage was about 15.5%. It's increased another 1% for fiscal year 2021, so that number represents 16% versus 15.56%. Moving on down to operating expenses, the major increases this year related to risk contingencies. So Commissioner Lapine, the $400,000 projection that we have this year includes estimates related to settlements of certain lawsuits. Last year, that number was more like 100,000.
Do you think that's enough?
Based on our discussions with some of our attorneys, we believe that is a prudent number, yes.
Okay, and then I might have missed something. Like I said, I've got this other conference too. I had to listen for a second. What did you say about like the extra? Yeah, I'll ask the question later. Never mind. Just go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Lastly, I'll talk about information technology expenses. The major driver in the increase in those expenses primarily relate to our website maintenance fees, as well as computer supplies. For website maintenance fees, we are projecting additional costs related to certain software like Zoom, which we're using right now, Adobe Professional, and also Active Directory software maintenance expenses. We're also proposing that we purchase a new recreation software called RecTrack. So those expenses are included in these information technology expenses as well. And then there's some additional software that our IT department is requesting.
I would like to share at this point, when we talked about information technology, is that we have made some tremendous strides over the last year and a half. However, We recognize that in order for us to achieve the vision that has been put forth by you all and by our citizens, we need to do a lot better. And then even from a security standpoint, as we all are aware, there are several things happening throughout the internet with spoofing, spamming, and unfortunately, when you don't have a strong network, those things can impact your business. So those increases also account for making sure that we're taking care of some of our security issues that we were unable to previously, but now we've built our infrastructure a little bit better. We just need to tie up some major projects.
How much are these softwares costing?
At one point, some of them we do have some quotes for, but we will be going through our procurement process to ensure that we get the best and most cost-effective software. So what you see here are basically placeholders, but we'll have the stronger numbers once we actually get those quotes back. We have not started that procurement process yet, but she can share with you some of our preliminary numbers of what we've looked at from previous agencies that have utilized this software, knowing that this number may change just because our use, the number of computers, the numbers of licenses and things that we will need will probably differ from what we have received quotes for, because we just have not finalized that process.
Lakita, I am really excited that you guys are looking at ways to incorporate technology and those kind of systems. So I'm glad that you guys are doing this. The question I have is, how will this change the experience for our park goers and for our citizens and things like that? So I guess I just want to know more about what we're going to be doing.
Very good question. And I don't have any problem with sharing a couple of links with you guys looking at some of the software. So the current software that we are working off, for instance, is called MyRec, and it is a system that was built by a much smaller company for a smaller organization. So there are several modules that we would like to have incorporated, which we see that this other software has. And what will it do for our users? It will create a better pass management system, meaning when people come into the facilities, and now, especially with the changes with COVID-19, keeping up with the individuals in your building, we need a better system by which our citizens can have their membership cards. Also, we are looking at ways that we can better plan our athletic leagues, and this software will allow us to do that through scheduling our rosters, our games, our tournaments, and also on the customer side, where our customers will be able to still maintain their accounts, but on a different platform for when they're registering for programs and activities. But one of the main things also for our internal customers, our employees, we sometimes find it very difficult to pull reports as we prepare for budget, as we prepare for making decisions around usage at the facilities. We need something that provides us with more data that we can utilize to give you the best information based off of what we're receiving. So right now we're kind of piecemealing some things together, and we've done well when we went to the new finance software, but we feel like our registration, membership, and league software should follow suit.
Okay. Will this platform support all of those, is what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. That's awesome. Good work.
Okay. And then I'll round out this discussion on our administrative division by talking about a few increases related to personnel expenses. Our tuition assistance, we have decided to reduce that slightly by half. Last year, we budgeted about $50,000 for tuition assistance. However, we've decided this year to cut that to $25,000. We didn't see a lot of participation. And then also, I think we are still trying to revamp that policy. So in an effort to in light of those two things, we've decided to reduce that from $50,000 to $25,000 this year. And then we also have a new line item called staff development and training. And this is related to our new director of training, Ms. LaShawn Walker. This is to assist us as an agency to help our staff in development and training. And so she's over those expenses. And so we've created a line item to assist her in developing and reviewing those expenses. And then lastly, on our professional services, if you look at our audit and consulting fees, we have increased that slightly this year, primarily due to us wanting to have an aquatic feasibility study to look at all of our aquatics and make recommendations. And so we're projecting that to be approximately $30,000. So that is part of the increase in the audit and consulting fees for next year. Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll move on to Community Relations Division. Here, you'll notice that the salaries expenses has decreased when compared to last year. And again, that's just a function of the information technology personnel being moved into our administrative division, and as well as our technology centers being moved into the recreation division. We have seen increases in our program expenses in this division, as well as our marketing expenses. For program expenses and community relations, the major driver of that increase is primarily due to some additional community outreach and youth prevention programs that we are wanting to implement in fiscal year 2021. And for marketing expenses, you'll notice that there's a new line item called rebranding. We have been working with community relations to assist us in the logo. And so once, I think if I'm not mistaken, we have put the logo out on social media, and the public is voting for the 3 logos that were presented to you at a board meeting recently. And so once we've gotten those results, we've gotten a new logo, we're going to move to obviously take the old logo off some of our signs, as well as some other agency related uniforms and such. And so as a part of that rebranding, those expenses are related to, they're about $80,000. So that again includes the park signage, that includes uniforms, and that also includes other things like promotional items.
And we will be going after a grant for some of the larger signs. As we've been doing our research, we found that some of the signs were purchased through the park grant program. So we will be looking at ways that we can decrease this cost by going after other funding sources.
$80,000 to rebrand Parks and Rec?
Well, it's not just, I'm sorry, it's not just the rebranding, it's the removal of the old logo from some of our signage and putting the new logo on. And those expenses it's costly. But again, as Ms. Watson has stated, we are going to go after some grant funding to assist us in those different expenses.
And Commissioner Johnson, we do have a breakdown, if you would like that separate, where Jamie, our public information officer, literally has done an inventory of every sign within the agency. And as you're aware, we have close to 50 facilities. So some of the signage was done in such a way that we won't be replacing it with that same, I think it was like steel. Well, there's a lot of expensive areas. This also includes the replacing of all the park signs and the recreation center signs, internal signage. So this is just phase 1, but it's our goal to go after that grant funding once we found out that's how the previous logo was able to be spread throughout the facilities, was going after the funding source. And so that's what we'll do.
Okay. And I'm just thinking about how much stuff we can actually fix and upgrade for 80 grand. You know, we could do a lot with $80,000, man. I would hope that, you know, this whole marketing thing would be contingent upon the the successful securing of a grant rather than just saying, hey, we're going to spend this whether we get a grant or not. I'd like us to get this grant because like I'm saying, $80,000, we could do a lot with $80,000.
Yes, sir. Those were the major increases that I wanted to talk about in the Community Relations Division. If there are no other questions, I'll move on to Recreation.
I have a question. This is Lisa.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the projected revenue take into account the 2 months that we've already been without, revenue, and then, however many months that we may or may not have it? Is it taken into consideration in this budget?
Yes, ma'am. I've gone back to the summary. If you look here, I'm projecting slightly lower parks and rental revenue. We're also projecting lower recreational program revenue, as well as athletic revenue as well. And that takes into account us being out these 2 months. Also, that also takes into account that we're probably not, or maybe we'll have a limited summer camp program starting July or in August. So I have accounted for that in these numbers or projections.
Okay.
These projections, is there a percentage that you've lowered them, like 85? Like, are we working at 85% or 75%, or what kind of what are we talking about here?
There isn't a particular 85%. I've looked at basically looking at kind of our average of parks and rental revenue, also taking into account the decreases that we've seen over the last few months, and lowered it by that amount. Same with our recreational program revenue. That includes our recreational class revenue. So I've also looked at what our average revenues are for those type of programs, and also reduced it slightly.
Yeah, but youth camp revenue is increased. Is it, or my eyes?
Right, and I was gonna, yes, ma'am, that's increased because of, we have in our new program budget, we've added additional revenues related to spring camp revenue.
Yes.
And then we've
revenue producing programs, basically.
Right.
We tried to, recognizing that we would not have the full revenue from the summer camp. Staff has worked hard to identify adding days in, for instance, when school is out, during parent-teacher conference. Those are different camps. The spring break, as well as looking at how we can bring additional opportunities that are break even or making a profit without taking from the citizen.
I understand. I just looked at youth camp and just assumed that was summer, and I'm thinking,
no, ma'am. That includes, as Ms. Watson said, that includes after school, but also those additional days, day camps, as well as spring break camps that we are projecting to do next spring.
Okay. And then I guess that's where I'm messing up too, because I'm thinking about this fiscal year as opposed to next year. So I apologize. I didn't. Okay, thanks.
No, ma'am, that's fine. This includes July, but it also includes June of next year.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, with that said, on the recreation summary here, you'll notice that there's increases in our salaries, and that's again due to the movement of technology center employees back to the recreation division, as well as the 2% cost of living increase. And then we do have 2 new additional recreation superintendents that are on staff starting. One, I think Kevin started in March.
Yes.
And then we have another recreation superintendent starting in May.
And as a part of the budget, when we finalize getting your feedback today, we'll also provide you with an updated organizational chart so you can see how all these things flow.
Okay. I would also like to talk a little bit about the athletic program revenues outside of us looking at these projections and keeping in mind that we might see some reductions related to COVID-19. When it comes to athletic program revenue, keep in mind that our community league fees have decreased. We previously charged 10% of registrations, but that has changed to 5%. So these projections include that reduction as well. Okay. For scholarship and grant revenue, we have increased that projection this year. Again, we are, as I stated earlier, we are looking to hire a grant coordinator to assist us with going after more scholarships and grants to help us with the lower projected revenue in some of our programs. And so part of that increase includes a conservation grant that we've already applied for. And then we're also including in that a summer feeding grant that we plan to apply for starting in June. So not for this current physical year, but for next physical year for our summer program starting in June. You'll notice that our program expenses have increased, and those increases primarily are related to some new athletic programs that we are projecting to start. That includes e-gaming, cheer and dance, as well as the additional summer spring camps that are projected in our revenue number, as well as the day camps that we're projecting as well. Okay, are there any other questions on the recreation summary?
I have some questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I was noticing you had special event supplies. Can you go back to that amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If we're not getting any income and everything is shut down right now. Okay, especially, okay, 233,000. Why would we have such a high I guess this is a projection?
Yes, ma'am, this is a projection. Now and I'll go back to the summary. Here, you see that special events revenue, we're projecting about $96,000, and that's due to increased programs related to youth prevention, special events, as well as some more outreach programs that we did not have in last year's budget. As a result of those additional programs, we do have some additional expenses that we would incur in relation to those programs. Now, the special events as well as those outreach programs would start again July 1. So the physical year starting July 1, meaning that's what these projections are related to.
Okay.
July 1 going forward, July 1 through June 30th, 2021. So although we're not, we don't have a lot of activity currently, we're projecting that we're going to pick up that activity in fiscal year 2021.
Okay, so I have another question. Have you considered, Lakita, this is for you. Have you considered having a hiring freeze since we don't have any activity presently?
Yes, we do have a hiring freeze. Those positions that were shared with you in the previous conversation with Brandy had already been interviewed for, already had been funded for, and were already set through HR. So we have not done any new hiring since the message went out. I think Diana sent that out that second week in March. So we're not currently doing any hiring.
So would a grant person coming in be over the foundation also?
Say that, I'm sorry, say that again.
Will the grant person we're looking at be over the foundation?
No, sir.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Brandy.
Yes.
On maintenance and we're on our, like, turf management. How is our budget for taking care of the fields and maintenance?
That's in our property management summary.
Could you bring that up real quick?
Sure. So overall, our expenses for property management has decreased slightly. And the major decreases related to that is our capital improvement. Last year, we did project to spend $1.8 million. And again, remember that's related to that additional bond funding that's been left over. What we're projecting this year is to spend approximately $750,000, and we're going to fund that via $400,000 of that additional bond proceeds and also potential grants that we could go after.
But did we never even got that bond money that you have that $1.8 million number?
Well, no, we're working on meeting with the county related to that 1.8 million. We just never were able to get that meeting scheduled. So part of the reason in reducing that amount is to kind of slow walk it and make sure that we're able to secure that meeting with them to discuss those additional bond funds, as well as some additional projects they would like to partner with us as well.
Okay, I'm just a big fan of trying to get that number as large as we can make it through the county.
And I know one of the questions is about ground maintenance. Yes, ground maintenance is covered in this budget between the operating expenses, supplies expense, and capital outlay. We have identified the facilities that need continued turf management. As you see with Polo, what can happen when we actually fund our property management team to get some work done. I'm very proud of what they've done. So we've also looked at this current fiscal year. We have the ability to take care of some equipment that we won't have to take care of next fiscal year.
Do you feel that's enough money for you though, Lakita, to do what you want?
It's never enough
I
money.
know it's never enough. Well, then why don't we ask for more?
Because the way that this is set up, and I'll defer again, Lawrence, you're on the call still. We can talk about why we can't, from a capital standpoint, request those additional funds from the county board. It has to be, that's separate. And that's why we talked a little bit about trying to get with them to do an increase, but we recognize that that may not be doable in this year.
Well, just my opinion is, especially when we come out of this, I can see a lot of county council people, commissioners, and people saying how wonderful it was being outside. And I think COVID's going to bring a renewed interest to recreation.
I agree.
And so as much money as we can get to fix our parks up and whatnot I'm all behind. And in fact, it leads me to my question, Lakita, that you mentioned in our last meeting, and it's pretty much a really cool thing. I don't know if you've driven down Polo Road in the last day, but they are doing that major project where they're going to take part of our property and go all the way to Alpine Road from Polo Road with a big, like, it looks like a 6 to 8 foot path of some sort. Looks like a 2 mile path. We have nothing to do with that. Is that correct?
No, sir.
They never asked it. So who will maintain that and all that kind of stuff and make sure it's secure and safe?
The county would maintain it whenever they work on projects that impact us and our facilities. We are able to work out an agreement whether maintenance will be the responsibility of the commission. And at this point, no agreement has been made. There is another trail project off of Brookfield that they will be working on. And then that's where the request has already been made for us to work with them to maintain that particular portion once it's been built.
Anyway, yeah, it looks nice. And I don't know if we could get extra money if we maintained it, that's all.
So Rob, I can hit on those real quickly. We do have a working draft of the maintenance agreement. I actually circulated it late last week, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. So we will get to that, and that's a conversation for probably a different day. On the bond funds, importantly, those monies have already been approved, the restrictions on the use of that money are going to be contained in terms of the authorization question, which will come back and add to the original authorization. We don't actually need the county's approval to spend the rest of that money because it's your money. I mean, it's your bond proceeds. The larger perspective here, though, is that they've asked for an update on the expenditure of the funds, and knowing that there are other approval projects coming up in the future that will require their approval to go back and issue additional general obligation debt, we saw it as kind of a good practice to go and make sure we were being open and transparent about the expenditure on all capital items because of that oversight role on the next series of borrowings. And so it's kind of a self-policed restriction, recognizing that keeping them up to date is going to be beneficial to us long term.
I agree with that.
So, Ms. Donzetta, did you have any other questions related to community relations before I finish up with property management?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So finally, on property management, what I will highlight as far as some increases is our repairs and maintenance. I'm going to flip back to the summary. Here, you'll notice that we projected $126,000 for fiscal year 2020. For fiscal year 2021, we're projecting $160,000. And the major driver of that increase is related to maintenance of our pools. We have recently contracted with Palmetto Pools to maintenance our 4 pools. And so last year, those projected expenses were not included in this budget, so we have included it here. And the total amount of those maintenance expenses are approximately $53,000, which is why that's increased quite a bit this year. Other increases related to capital outlay, and again, this is related to our information technology budget. We are increasing those expenses to assist with some net. Also, we are looking to replace our telephone system and to move more into a cloud-based system versus what we have here, or now, excuse me. And then we are also looking to procure some network monitoring expenses as well. So that is what's driving that increase. So overall, our property management budget has decreased slightly, but again, there are some increases as I've already stated there. Okay. Are there any questions on property management? So I'll go back to the summary page again. In closing, our overall budget has increased about 4%. The major the increase in expenditures again are our payroll and payroll related expenses, operating, our program expenses, and property management expenses related to repairs and maintenance and capital outlay. And then we also have increases related to our marketing expenses, as well as some training and development expenses.
So that concludes Brandy's report. Brandy, can you talk about next steps?
Sure. The next step is once you guys have approved this budget, we will submit it to the county May the 4th. And then as in last year, we have 3 readings. And so I have not gotten that schedule of readings related to the budget, but as soon as I have been updated with that information, I will let everyone know.
Right, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We are now ready to move into executive session. Can I have a motion regarding executive session?
I'll make a motion to move into executive session.
Any second?
Second.
Motion's been made and properly second. Cornelia?
Cotton,
Yes.
Lapine,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Coach V.
Yes.
Motion approved.